podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Satkoviak. We are tackling part two of our 19-part summer preview series, fall preview series. I don't know what to call it at this point. We are talking the Illinois Fighting Illini tonight, and for this episode, we are pleased to be joined by Sonny Verma of the Locked On Illinois and the Illini cast. Sonny, thank you so much for joining us this evening, sir. How are you tonight?
I'm wonderful. I really do appreciate the invite. You guys are one of the more entertaining accounts there is on social media. So once you reached out, I couldn't wait to say yes.
That's all you, Clinton. I am no part of that. That is all you, sir. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I've spent the day. It's beautiful weather here in Columbus. A little warm, but not as hot as it's been. For one more day, and then we're to the holiday 3-day weekend, which I'm thrilled about. And I've been looking forward to talking about the Fighting Illini today. We've got, like I tell Ryan, Sonny, I have quite a few coworkers who listen to the show, so they're pretty excited to hear about Illinois and hear what you have to say. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to hear about my fourth place Big Ten power ranking team and how they're shaking up for the year. I'm still trying to piss the Oregon fans off because apparently that's all I do is piss people off. Not intent. Well, I guess there's something about my face. That's what Sam tells me. But anyway, I try my best.
That Oregon crowd is loud too. Like if you make a mention of them, you're going to get those clicks because they love their football. I'm learning that about the four new teams that joined the Big Ten Conference. That anytime you mention Oregon, you can double those likes and views because they want to hear everything, even
Yep.
what the opposition is saying about them.
Yeah, they're passionate. And I mean, I guess there's no better opportunity to start quote tweeting some things when you're trying to dunk on people for saying something you don't like, I guess. But so
Well,
goes the internet.
USC is kind of like Miami of the Big Ten. They're just always back, but they never are. So their fan base has been pretty interesting to interact with. Guys, if you're joining us live tonight on YouTube, thank you very much. As Ryan said, we have special guest Sonny here. Make sure you follow us there, subscribe to us there, ITP CFB. You can also check us out on your preferred social media platforms of Twitter and /X and Instagram at ITPCFB. And if you can't join us live for the shows, you can always catch us next morning in your podcast feeds. Anywhere you can get a podcast, you can find us. Just search Inside the Pylon Midwest College Football Podcast. Give us a follow, leave us a review to help us grow the show. Ryan, kick it to you for the sound.
Oh shit! There we go.
Hey, those mountains blue? It's Inside the Pylon six-pack of questions.
Yeah, I fat fingered that one a little bit. So for those of you who did not join us Monday night, whereas last year we were doing 5 burning questions, we have added an extra question to make it a ice cold 6-pack for the 2025 season. Maybe next year we'll do 7, Clinton. That's kind of a lucky.
You're
lucky
going to keep
number,
climbing
right?
and climbing.
Yeah, something like that. I did not intentionally do this today, but I got my LaCroix is orange, so we're
There we go.
we're fitting the theme.
I guess I'm colorblind, but this is like a peachy orange shirt, right?
That's close enough. That's
So,
close enough.
in theme, we're all here for the Illini tonight.
I love it. Let's do this.
Well, Sonny, question number 1. You mentioned this a little bit pre-show. We go back a few years ago to 2023. Actually, let's go to 2022 when you had an 8-win season, should have been 9, robbed in the Michigan game. But an 8-4 season, then followed by a disappointing bolus 5-7 season in 2023. So coming into 2024, weren't a lot of positive vibes around the Illini program that we were picking up on. But Brett Bielema turned their fortunes around, delivered a 9-3 season, post-bowl game 10-3. Did some research today. Illinois' football program has 10 wins 4 times and 9 wins 5 times. So that is one, excuse my French, hell of an accomplishment for this team. What do you view as the primary reason the team was able to exceed the expectations last year? And is that something they can replicate in 2025 now that they've caught everyone's attention and they're on everyone's radar?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. I think it's one of those where I think the players now, especially now we're talking about year 4 or 5 of Brett, they're buying into the culture that Brett Bielema has been building for however many years now. Brett said it himself when that first year that he came to Illinois. I believe we won 5 games. And he talked about, because there was a lot of very close games that we just could not flip at the end. And he said that the culture here is that they always think they're going to lose. And so it's my job as the guy in charge to kind of flip that switch and have them go with the expectation that they're going to win those games. And what happened last year, I think Illinois had the third best record in one-score games in all the entire nation. So, it's a coaching staff that doesn't get flustered. When you have Brett Bielema coaching in the Big Ten Conference, that guy, as my friend Big Ten Ted would say, he was born to coach football in the Big Ten Conference. He knows what it takes. And, slowly, year by year, he's been building the floor of this football team. Last year was incredible. As you mentioned, they won 10 games. And, guys, they were one of the youngest teams in the entire Power Four. A lot of those guys are actually coming back this year. We're talking anywhere from 17 to 18 starters from that Citrus Bowl winning team. Again, a game that they beat a South Carolina team that a lot of people were pegging to have into the college football playoff. So it was an impressive season. Now it's all about, can they continue to live up to those expectations? But I'll be honest, I'm an Illini fan. I've been an Illini fan as long as I remember. I don't remember being this excited. And it's not even just hopeful, but it's a quiet confidence. And that has everything to do with the guy in charge.
Well, I love that point about the mentality because you hear it in, I mean, sports all the time. New coaches come in, whether we're talking college sports or pro sports. If it's a bad situation, they're talking about having, change the culture of mediocrity or change this losing culture. We need to teach these guys how to win. And you get a little bit of that, as Clinton mentioned, in 2022. 2023, the follow-up to that, I'd argue even like having that rough season kind of helps you a little bit learn how to deal with the expectations, because for the guys, maybe there's not a ton of them who were on that team, but you can point to them and say like, hey, the last time we went into a season with expectations, this is how it played out. This is what we have to do different, X, Y, and Z in order to follow this up, this season that we had last year, and carry it into 2025. And I just think, talking about that Citrus Bowl game, the way that he was just barking at Shane Beamer on the sidelines, he's out there having fun. He's loose. He's not afraid to get at it. Like, it just felt like this team fed off of that energy last year.
Again, that's, what Brett does. He's very vocal, as we all know, on social media, and I talk about this all the time on Locked On Illini. I think it's one of those where Brett understands where Illinois is on the pecking order, and just like he had to change the players' mindset, that locker room's mindset of always being the little dog that's being kicked, he had to change first the culture in the locker room, but now the culture surrounding this Illinois football program. That's why he was so vocal, in my opinion, last year on Twitter, on X, about involving Illinois in the college football conversation. Now, did we legitimately belong in there? Probably not. But I think his plan was more long-term. What he was doing was he was setting in stone, hey, Illinois college football playoff, and then kind of setting the scene for this year, where all of a sudden we do have, again, a lot of these starters coming back, a team that should be in the top 25 preseason. I've heard as high as 15. Well, now when the conversations do happen, if the season does work out pretty well, having Illinois in the college football playoff isn't going to be something that you wouldn't expect. It's almost going to be expected. And so I think that's it's just Brett playing the long game, which is what he does so well.
Listen, I know how dangerous good Illinois teams can be. 2007, Juice Williams, as an Ohio State fan, that still burns very deeply. I believe that was a Rose Bowl Illinois team, right?
My wife's a Buckeye, so okay. I deal a lot with you guys. We're actually going to the game this year. That's going to be in Champaign, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Hopefully, Ohio State can't draw a night game. Hopefully, Illinois can draw a night game for that one. Hopefully, Fox will let them have it.
Yeah, no, they got the orange out for that particular game.
Awesome.
It's gonna be a fun experience. Hopefully we can do to Ohio State what we did to Michigan last year, which was our biggest game. CBS made a big deal out of it, and Illinois came out victorious in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite as hopeful, optimistic on this one, but you never know.
Absolutely.
Well, Sonny, it feels like part of the reason for this much optimism around the Illini, and you mentioned the returning starters, and there's certainly a ton of them on the offensive side of the ball. And the next two questions that we have for you here center around that. Just big picture, I want to get your thoughts on what do you think this unit is realistically capable of in 2025? You've got the 5 linemen returning up front. You've got the quarterback coming back. He had a huge breakout season last year. you still got, even with the McCray transfer, you're still bringing back a lot of that backfield. But the issue is the top two stud wide receivers, Zakhari Franklin and Pat Bryant, are gone. One name that I had kind of identified as Hudson Clement from West Virginia, 51 catches last year. What do you expect from the wide receiver room? And are there any other names that we should know heading into the season?
Yeah, and it's a very fair question. Again, we have a lot of those starters coming back, in particular on the offensive line, in that running back room. Wide receiver is going to be a question, but quite honestly, it was a question last year. Last year, right around this time, we were kind of worried. Hey, we had lost Isaiah Williams and Casey Washington to the NFL draft. And so we were wondering, hey, who's going to replace our two starters? In comes Pat Bryant, who was ready to take that next step in his final year of college football, and we were able to bring in Zakhari Franklin, as you just mentioned. This year, I think we have something very similar going. The way for me to critique the incoming transfers, like, I'll be honest, I'm an Illinois fan, and I also do a little Big Ten work. I don't watch much West Virginia football. So when we got Hudson Clement, I was like, okay, let me learn about this guy. For me, the best way to learn about an incoming transfer is to read what the outgoing team's fans say about him. And those Mountaineer fans were very upset that Hudson was leaving, and that they truly do believe that he can be a star. So that had me very, I guess the mood has changed a little bit. I feel very comfortable. Maybe he can do something similar to what Zakhari was able to produce. And when it comes to young guys, when it comes to wide receivers, I love Colin Dixon. He's one of my favorite players. I think he was a great player last year. Malik Elzy is one of the highest rated recruits of Brett Bielema's tenure. Alexander Kapka-Jones showed a lot of flashes last season. I think while our two names at the top of the depth chart may not be as notable, I think the pure depth in that locker room is. And even if Colin Dixon isn't ready to make the leap that Pat Bryant made, or Hudson Clement isn't quite as good as Zakhari, I think our 3, 4, 5 guys are young and with so much potential that room is going to still be in pretty good shape.
And it certainly helps having Luke Altmyer, who's now in his third year with the program, and a steady progression every single year. So when you have that reliable piece to be able to sling the rock to new receivers, it helps a ton.
So I was going to say that too. It's, in my opinion, in this new climate of college athletics, and in particular college football, one of the biggest cheat codes is having a senior quarterback. And Luke Altmyer, as you mentioned, his third year, we weren't sure if we were going to get him for a third year. There was talks about him possibly entering the NFL draft. And then even when he decided he was going to come back, Tennessee came calling. And all of a sudden, all the Tennessee insiders were all telling us that, hey, no, they're showing Luke Skywalker GIFs on Twitter, basically just hinting that Altmyer was the guy. And, he turned down a good 7-figure deal because he believed in Barry Lunny Jr., our offensive coordinator, who's returning. Him and Barry have a fantastic chemistry. Brett Bielema, again, it's about the culture. We have the saying with the Illini, it's family, Familly. And you can see it's not just all talk. When Luke is turning down, he's a Southern boy, right? Like for him to go back to the SEC, it would make a lot of sense. And he would have gotten paid very handsomely for it. But he decided to stick around. We bring all those offensive linemen back. The running backs are coming back. And again, as we discussed, I'm really excited about these wide receivers that we have. I think the offense has potential to be one of the better ones in the Big Ten Conference. Absolutely.
Kicking it over to probably my personal favorite part of every offense is the running backs. And last year, it kind of seemed to be running back by committee, particularly after Caden Fegan's season-ending injury. If you kind of elaborate, what is his health status after missing spring practice, and then how do you envision the carries kind of being divvied up this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because, anyone who watches Caden Fegan, even that they're not an Illini fan, they look at him and like, that boy's big, right? He looks like a linebacker playing running back, and he just plows over people. But this is now his second straight spring practice that he's missing. He had an injury last year. He's got an injury this year. I don't quite have an update about what his status is going to be at the beginning of the year. Obviously, losing Josh McCray hurts here because a three-headed monster of Fegan, McCray, and Lawfrey, you would not have been worried about at all. I would take those three up with almost any other running back room in the Big Ten Conference. But with McCray gone, Aiden Lawfrey, I think, quite honestly, could have an even higher ceiling than Fagan. Lawfrey is more of the lightning to Fagan's thunder, if you're going to say. Let me put it that way. But then we also have a young, he's going to be a sophomore now, who showed so many flashes last year as a freshman. And his name's Khalil Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to that name, because if anything were to happen with our running back room, it's one of those positions where we're most, even if Caden isn't ready, we have so much talent in that room. Guys, this is Brett Bielema coaching football team. He's an offensive lineman and running backs. He's going to have those locker rooms talented at those positions, and that's what the case is down in Champaign right now.
Was he still head coach at Wisconsin that year? They had almost 3 guys go for 1,000 yards. I don't remember what year it was. In passing, I saw it on the internet the other day, and I think it was 2011 Wisconsin, where it was like James White, Monty Ball, and someone else. And
yeah, then I believe, because 2011, I believe so.
All right, I'm gonna do some digging.
Absolute monster backfield, by the way,
that's-
with that Wisconsin team.
that was a
Goodness
running
sakes.
back. But I mean, you got to think too, like with Altmyer as well, you do have a little bit of a rushing threat from him. Maybe not like a Riley Leonard gonna run 200 times over a 16-game season running threat, but certainly a guy who's proven capable of tucking the ball and running and making guys miss.
That's again why I'm trying not to be over the top in my optimism for this Illinois team. But yeah, you're right. Luke is a guy who, at the beginning of his first year at Illinois, he was not only our quarterback, but he was our best running back. He kept us in a lot of those games where our offensive line was absolutely struggling. We could not find 5 guys to put together. Once we had an offensive line, one guy would go down, and then the next week, the next guy would go down, and we were constantly shuffling through. But, Luke, the video footage that we've watched, he's been throwing with, what's his name, Archie Manning, in whatever camp that they're at right now. He looks bigger. He looks stronger. One of the questions with Luke, after his first year, was, did he have the voice? Did he have, if you're a quarterback, you need to have a certain level of, aura, to kind of take command of that huddle. That was in question with Luke, but it just, he took control of everything last year, and I don't think that's a question anymore. He's been selected as one of the team captains. That's going to be at the Big Ten Media Days in a couple weeks, and so it's been a joy to see a young quarterback grow. It didn't work out for him at the SEC in that one year. He came to Illinois. He had a pretty solid season. He got hurt. Then we all know the story of the quarterback coming in, throwing 500 yards against Indiana, and all of a sudden Luke Altmyer was sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought that was like a strike against Luke Altmyer, when it wasn't necessarily. Luke was a good soldier about it. Once the season ended, a lot of people were wondering, is Luke leaving? Is Luke about to transfer out? Are we going to have to find a new quarterback? Luke says, no, I understand. This was, I don't know how old you guys are, but this is like circa Kurt Warner in the 90s, where when Trent Green gets hurt, Kurt Warner comes in and he just thrown for 400 yards every single game. Back then, they weren't throwing for 400 yards every single game, and it was just kind of a similar situation. Luke took that in stride. He sat back, he learned, and he watched some film. And last year, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten Conference. And in my opinion, this year, he's a top 2 quarterback in the Big Ten Conference.
I don't think that is an unfair take at all. Quick sidebar before we transition to the defense, and I promise I'm going to stick this transition in ways that you cannot possibly imagine. It was the 2010 Wisconsin Badgers rushing offense. James White, 1,052 yards. John Clay, 1,012 yards. And Monty Ball, 996 yards. Every single one of them had 14 or more touchdowns on the ground. That is truly insane.
Wow.
That's insane, man.
Speaking of Wisconsin, moving on to the defensive side of the ball, Illinois added some certified Angus beef up front at the expense of Wisconsin's defensive line room, with 3 transfers coming from the Badgers. James Thompson listed at 6'5", 295. Kurt Neal, a stocky 6 foot, 290, and Leon Lowry Jr. on the edge, 6'3", 252. How do you envision these guys fitting into kind of that front four, front seven rotation? And are there any other names for us to know to help bolster a rush defense that did struggle a little bit last year, averaging almost 150 yards a game allowed?
Yeah, if we're talking about units, this is probably the one I have the most questions about. Not that the talent isn't there. Brett did raid his former employer. He had a really good relationship with what was the coach though? The young coach that the defensive. He was hired as the temporary coach, and then he was let go. I forget his name now.
I'm blanking.
Oh,
Yeah, the young Wisconsin.
Jim Leonard?
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Thank you.
Leonard.
Yes. Jim Leonard. Jim Leonard actually coached at Illinois as an analyst the year after he was let go, or they parted ways with the Wisconsin Badgers. And so Leonard and Bielema had a good relationship. Leonard recruited a lot of these guys. So he kind of filled Brett in on what these guys are capable of. I really like Thompson. I think, again, the same critique that I used before. Wisconsin fans were legitimately bummed that he was leaving this particular year. I think he's going to have the highest ceiling on this defensive line, but the defensive line is one of the more intriguing prospects, or like stories for me, I guess you can say, because we had Drazan Newton, we had Keith Randolph, we've had success on that defensive line, but we haven't been able to necessarily recruit the top of the line that I would have expected us to at this point. Even now, we're talking about guys that we're getting in as transfers, but other guys to pay attention to is like a Gentle Hunt is a senior this year, and I'm trying to think Pat Farrow. Pat Farrow is going to be a sophomore this year. He was one of the more highly recruited guys that we've had. I think if there's any young guy that's going to make a jump and maybe be in that conversation of the Drazan Newton and Keith Randolph's by the time he's done, Pat Farrow would be that guy.
Newton. I'm so sad. I'm a Bengals fan. I'm so sad when we didn't get a chance to draft him. That's all I wanted was just Drazan Newton
Your
as a
RB1
Bengal.
this year should be in the lineup though.
Chase Brown is a monster, man. I'm so sad Zach Moss, he suffered a neck injury last year. We, of course, never wish that on anyone. But getting Chase Brown those RB1 reps was a gift from God for that offense. That offense is already so dynamic outside of their piss-poor offensive line play. But everything else is just like gung-ho, man. And Chase Brown fits that perfectly. I love it. I'm so thankful we got him.
I can't wait to see how he does.
Yeah, absolutely. See, we can make Bengals fans out of anybody now. You guys are tied into us. And who couldn't love Joe Burrow, right? Yeah. So if we look a little bit deeper on this roster, deeper as in more of the backfield here, the secondary returns, but it was a unit that ranked 78th against the pass in 2024. What areas do they need to improve in, especially considering that three of their Illinois' toughest opponents in conference are coming against teams that like to want to air the ball out?
When I talked about last year's team being so incredibly young, for a big part, we're talking about those defensive backs. I'm really excited actually this year in regards to that secondary. I think Xavier Scott is a name that just for some reason has not gotten out there as much as it deserves to be. I think Xavier could be the next great Illini cornerback drafted into the NFL, and we've been churning those out as of the last couple seasons. He's a little bit smaller, but man, this guy is an absolute dog on the field. He was another guy who could have gone to the NFL this past year. He chose not to, and he's like, hey, again, he believes in the culture, he believes in the system. I think with him, Aaron Henry coaching that defense, I think it's going to be a struggle, sure, but now that unit is 1 year older, I'm counting on the experience making that group collectively better.
I mean, you guys had the likes of Devin Witherspoon, and then also Sidney Brown, brother of Chase Brown, in that defensive backfield at one time. I believe Witherspoon was released under Ryan Walters, correct? And yes. Sidney Brown, did he cross paths? I would assume
they were both not with. Wait, no, they were. Yeah, Aaron Henry. Ryan Walters was the defensive coordinator. Aaron Henry was the defensive backs coach at that time. So, yeah, he did coach both of those guys, but he didn't coach them as a defensive coordinator. He coached them as a defensive backs coach.
Certainly. Okay, I got you. I want to kind of wrap up our discussion here, Sonny, with more of a big picture question on the season. Certainly, kind of hashing this in the conversation of expectations are different this year. There's a lot of love around this team in kind of these preseason mock top 25s, top 15s, like you've alluded to. You'll even see some of these preseason playoff projections have Illinois in them, which it almost feels like it's getting to a point where Illinois is such a trendy sleeper that you can't even call them a sleeper anymore. And I think a lot of that too is the schedule seemingly sets up nicely to accommodate a run here. You know, obviously the tough game against Ohio State, smack dab in the middle of Big Ten play, but otherwise it certainly is not a god awful draw. What would you constitute kind of as a successful season for Illinois in 2025? Are we, given the schedule, given what's coming back, are we approaching playoff or bust territory, or is it kind of a, you know what, let's get through up to Ohio State undefeated, win that Indiana game, big rivalry game, and then at that point kind of see what happens?
You know, it's if you talk to the average Illini fan who's drank the orange and blue Kool-Aid, yeah, you know, we're hearing the whispers of college football playoff, and you know, we're pretty close last year.
Mhm.
If I'm sitting here saying, hey, we're returning all those same guys, you know, why not? I get it, but our over/under coming into a month ago was 7.5, which always has me worried. Okay, it's jumped one win, now it's at 8.5, so I think that's closer to what the number should be. Just taking a quick peek at the schedule, two of those first four games are tough, but ones that are winnable. You know, I think that Duke game in week 2 is going to be very important. I think Duke is also one of the teams that's going to be the better ones in the ACC. I hate that we're playing in Durham, but you know, I'm confident that Brett's going to have the team ready. And then you have week 4. Week 4, it's going to be Illinois, Indiana kicking off the season. Two teams that, you know, are the Cinderella stories from last year. Two head coaches who both recognize and understand just how important that game is going to be. I just had a crossover episode with Locked On Hoosiers that's going to be releasing on Thursday.
Nice.
And, you know, we discussed how, you know, you have the blue bloods of the Big Ten, right? You have the Ohio States, Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon, I guess you can call them at this point. But then in that next tier, you know, Illinois and Indiana are so historically down programs that we're fighting for that attention. And we know that Illinois and Indiana, like those two, especially with Wisconsin down, Iowa kind of being stagnant right now, there's room there. And both of these schools being so close to each other, we're recruiting the same type of player. This game's going to be very important. Like, it's a shame. If you talk to Illinois fans last season, we think we could have beaten that Hoosiers team if we had a chance to play them. If you talk to Hoosiers fans, they think they would have blown us out. It's a game that, you know, especially if Illinois is able to beat Duke in week 2, I think it's a potential game day game.
Oh, yeah,
Because,
for
you know,
sure.
Indiana's got a cakewalk of a schedule. If Illinois is able to take care of Duke at Duke, then Brett Bielema, he works that media, okay? There's a reason that we had all that big buzz for that Michigan game last year. He's got contacts with Nike. He's got contacts with CBS. They're going to be chirping that this game should be for game day. So, you know, I think the season is going to kind of be decided by those two games. If Illinois can split those, then I think we're in pretty good shape. For me, honestly, I'm not at the college playoff or bust yet. I've just been watching Illinois football for way too long. I can't put myself there. You know, if you take a look at the other games, right, Ohio State, fine. We're not going to be favored to win that one. But there's a couple other 50-50 games, right? Again, Duke, Indiana. I think USC, even though they're struggling, they're still USC. They're still going to be super talented. Is Illinois going to have the athletes to keep up with the speed that the Trojans are going to bring to Champaign? We'll see. Ohio State we play, but then we have a week off, and then we go to Washington. And going to Washington, I think a lot of people are underrating what the Huskies are going to look like next year. I think that's going to be a 50-50 game. And then, you know, at that point, Wisconsin, I think the second to last game of the season, Luke Fickell might be coaching for his job at that point. And, you know, Brett Bielema, Wisconsin, there's always a lot of, you know, energy for that game. So it's one of those where I think Vegas nailed it at 8.5. I think if we get to 9 wins, I will be completely satisfied with that win total. I think if we get 8, I'd still be kind of content. But if we hit 10, And if we all of a sudden do get one of those last spots in the college football playoff, I wouldn't be surprised either. It's just one of those teams where it's deeper than we've had in years past. We're not Ohio State where you can lose a starter and you have a 5-star replacing him, but the floor of this team just continues to rise every single year. And I just think with the experience from last year, and now everybody's 1 year older, and we've kept both coordinators, and we've got the same head coach, I just like the trajectory of where the Illini are headed right now.
Well, I have two things with that. Ryan, on his bold predictions, or our bold prediction show, said Big Ten had 4 playoff teams last year. He said 2 of those teams will not make the playoff this year. We're still going to get 4, but we're going to get 2 new ones. So it seems perfectly fitting for Illinois, Iowa, Washington maybe to sneak in there. There's some great opportunity there. And then we jokingly said, what a way you could turn the Big Ten up on its head if Indiana, Illinois rematch in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship.
Fun. That would be so fun.
Like, my goodness.
These two fan bases hate each other so much on the basketball side that, it would be incredible. Like, Big Ten fans who don't pay attention to basketball may not understand just what they're in for. If Illinois and Indiana game, especially if both teams are undefeated, the Hoosiers will be undefeated because they don't schedule anybody. Illinois, does, but the chirping that's going to go on, I think there's going to be a lot of fan bases, the Oregons, the Ohio States, who their entire timeline is just going to be seeing Hoosiers and Illini fans going at it, and people are going to be wondering, where did these people come from?
We're here for it. Yeah. That's some of the big thing in interactions with people, not only like nationally, that Ryan and I try to help get the word out about Illinois and Indiana's, but people in the Big Ten of other fan bases, they don't understand the talent that both of these teams have. Indiana continues to be overlooked. They played a soft schedule last year. Well, you know what? That wasn't their fault. That was made like 10 years ago. They played their schedule. They got the right coach. Same thing with Illinois. Well, they went into Penn State. They couldn't win, and they got hammered by Oregon. I'm like, well, those are pretty talented teams that made the playoff.
And then a game with 4 minutes left.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and you're putting a team in who, coming into last year, we didn't know what the expectations were coming off a 5-7 season. Like, look what they accomplished. And it's kind of you get the age-old battle or debate between Big Ten and SEC, right? Like, SEC yearly top to bottom is the deeper and better conference. The Big Ten is top-heavy. And I kind of flipped it this year where I think Big Ten could be 12, 13 teams deep. I'm not saying 12, 13 to make the playoff, but 12 to 13 kind of SEC-esque where South Carolina comes up and bites Alabama, or almost bites Alabama. Vandy bites Alabama. There we go. Vandy almost bites Texas. Like, these scenarios where you better be careful with a Minnesota or Michigan, again, perceived as maybe being down this year, but they got a 5-star talent at quarterback. Like, from 1 to 11 or 12, you better be careful. And if somehow Fickle can work magic with Wisconsin, you better be careful with them. Like, I think this is the deepest the Big Ten's been. Really, I know we're deeper because we have 18 teams, but in theory, deeper the league has been in a long time, and I expect it to be extremely competitive this year. So hopefully, if Indiana and or Illinois are sitting there at the end of the year this year with 10 wins, it is a respected 10 wins because it's going to have to be earned for these teams.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I haven't really put much thought into it, but as you were talking, you're talking about, you have the blue bloods. Michigan is just throwing together an insane recruiting class right now. I feel like every time I log on to Twitter, they're getting a new 5-star that they're buying. So it's like, Iowa is it's still Iowa, right? They're still going to win 8-9 games. It's just they're so boring that they're kind of forgotten about. And so that's what makes Illinois and Indiana so important to the league this year. Illinois did a big service to the Big Ten last year by beating a South Carolina team.
Sure.
They're talking about similar tiers within their conferences, because otherwise we would be hearing the same thing coming into this year, that, hey, top-heavy Big Ten, but when it comes to the middle and the bottom, no, the SEC continues to dominate. That conversation is not there anymore. Big Ten has won the last 2 national championships. Again, Illinois beats South Carolina, a team that a lot of people wanted in the college football playoff last year. If Illinois, Indiana can win 9-10 games respectively, I think both of their over-unders are 8.5. They enter their names into that conversation where, it's SEC will always have under the table money, But when it comes to the actual money, right now, Big
Mm-hmm.
Ten can compete with them, and now all of a sudden we're able to get a lot of the athletes to come north.
Two guys you can't count out: Signetti and Bielema.
Well, that's
Proven
what
guys.
I
and
was just gonna say with that too is like just kind of building off what you've been talking about with Brett for this podcast, like selling the program, putting his name out there, kind of laying the groundwork here. Like, I mean, it's the same thing with Signetti too. Say what you want about his brashness and going on game day saying we kicked the shit out of top 25 teams, you know, an hour before they put up 140 yards in 55 minutes against Notre Dame. I just had to throw that dig in there, but like we're talking about a league that is as a whole on the upswing, right? Like you've had long term, Ohio State's always been kind of that team that's in the top. You've had Michigan that's been, you know, a little up or down traditionally over the last 20 years, but it's certainly been on the upswing. Penn State's been on the upswing. You add Oregon to the league, you add Washington to the league, but now you have these teams that have had brief flashes in the pan throughout their history who are on the upswing. And much like when the SEC kind of started its rise 20 years ago, and you had some of these other teams where people would look at them and they'd be like, oh, who gives a shit about South Carolina or, you know, oh, Florida, woo, or anything like that. Like, you got to come out here and let people know, like, hey, just because we don't have this long-term successful history doesn't mean we're bad now, right? Like, college football has completely changed over the last 5 years. Going back any longer than that to say, or try to make any like broad sweeping conclusions about the sport is just not. I just don't know how you can do that at that point. So
Yeah, and
having
well,
these
like
guys coming out here to kind of sell themselves, like that's good for their schools. It's good for the league.
you mentioned all those teams, and you didn't even mention a team that historically could be a top 5, 6 program in all of college football. USC. Like Lincoln
Sure.
Riley
Yep.
really hasn't figured it out there, but when USC is rolling, they are the program out west. And that's a team that Oregon's going to have to deal with at some point. But again, that just kind of tells you the level of depth, that we discussed earlier that this conference has. Right now, USC is down. Wisconsin historically is better than they are right now. It's going to be the prerogative of Brett Bielema that when USC turns things around, if either Luke Fickell turns things around or they make another hire and they return to the 8, 9, 10 wins that they're used to, can Brett keep the momentum going within Illinois to keep them in that conversation, in that what I call the second tier of Big Ten, where they can battle for 8 to 10 wins every single year? Because quite honestly, guys, that's all we want in Champaign.
Sure.
Every time I used to do these preview shows, it's like, can we just make a bowl game? That's all I wanted. And more often than not, the answer would be no. Now we're sitting here and the over-under is 8.5. And if we won only 6 games this year, by and large, it would be considered a disaster of a season. And so it's like every now and then I just got to pinch myself and, see if this is all real.
No, well, listen, man. That's why I like asking D. What do you think would be successful? Because it's not my place to look another fan base in the eye and say you should expect this or you should expect that. Like everyone, we get very playoff centric with this sport now, and I think sometimes we forget what it should be about, which is having fun, beating your rival, getting to talk shit for a full year on the internet, and the smaller things, and like that we can't lose the importance in the the micro of that as well.
Yeah, see, and like I come from a different perspective in the sense where I've been an Illini football fan for like 25 years, right? Like a lot of these kids who are entering college now or have only been watching college football, for the last 5, 6 years, they are used to Illinois, being a pretty decent football program right now. And I joke around about this on Lockdown Illini all the time. Like I look directly into the camera and try to tell them, hey, it's not always going to be like this. We are in a fantastic position right now, and I just think because of my track record with this team, with this program, that my expectations are a little bit more measured. Again, if we won 8 games, 90% of the fan base is going to be very upset. I said I would be okay with it, not happy, but still, to me, an 8-5 season at Illinois. I mean, you have a couple coin flips on this schedule. Last year, the coin flips went our way. This year, maybe the law of averages turns things around. But even if they don't go our way and we still win 8 games, if we're at a point in my life where Illinois football losing 8 or winning 8 games is a disappointment, I'll take that every year.
Listen, in Columbus, they're ready to burn places down if they only win 10.
Trust me, I know that's the other side of my family. I'm very
I
familiar with how your fan base.
Oh
is.
my gosh, it's absurd. I have a former high school football coach who still wanted Ryan Day fired after they won the national championship because he didn't beat Michigan. I was like, dude,
Okay.
this is why you're retired, coach. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what makes college football special to me and over the NFL is the love that these fan bases have and the passion that they have. Now I get it in the NFL, you get like the Eagles fans and the Bills fans who are off the charts, but just nothing matches college football to me, and it's why it's been a passion of mine since I could first watch a TV screen. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's I enjoy my pro sports. You know, I'm a season ticket holder for every single one of them, at least at one point in my life. But there's just a certain purity, which, if I'm being frank, might be leaving the game soon with the way these drastic changes are happening.
Yep.
I have no idea what college football landscape is going to look like in 2-3 years, but at least for now, I can still pretend it's still there until it's not.
Sonny, before we let you get out of here, sir, please let our listeners know where they can locate your work.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're an Illini fan, just check me out at Locked On Illini. I produce content every single day, even during the off seasons, 30 minutes every single day. I try to knock out a new episode. You can follow me at the Sonny V on all your favorite social medias. Also follow at Talk Illini. It's a new side project I'm just kind of working on, especially during the off season that I'm trying to build up. But don't be shy. Say hello. I'm constantly going back and forth with emailers, talkillini@gmail.com if you want to reach out to me. It's just, we're doing our best. It's, I think, only, 59 days till kickoff, August 29th. Guys, there's going to be college football next month.
I'm very
Let's
excited.
go.
I am very excited.
Cannot wait. Well, Sonny, maybe if you and fellow Locked On Hoosier host aren't too busy, sometime we do 3 times a week during the regular season. And on Monday nights, it's kind of our more open episode, being Saturdays a review, Thursdays pick'ems. Maybe we can swing both you guys in here for that September 20th battle for a little prelude.
Jacob and I are very good friends, and I'll tell you that I think we'd both be down for that.
Awesome. That'd be awesome, man.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining us once again as we continue our summer/fall preview series here on Inside the Pylon. We will be back with you guys on Monday night after your long weekend, staying in the greater Midwest area, talking with Ryan Burns from 24/7 Gophers, talking the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Everyone, have a safe weekend. Please don't shoot fireworks at each other. It's stupid. You don't want to spend the 4th of July weekend in the ER. Not speaking from personal experience, just sharing stories from my dad. Don't do it. Everyone be safe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.